properly designed controls, properly designed, properly used. And Neil said earlier about using what we have, which is incredibly intelligent. That's what we should do. When it comes to technologies, LEDs almost reached its plateau. We can squeeze notionals about 213, 220, somewhere in and around there. But once you put a diffuser and stuff in front of it, then it starts to. So we're almost there. Green LED, which will replace blue, is probably 20 years away from what I can see. So there's nothing coming, and we're banning OLED. People always go OLED, but OLED's one of the banned lighting technologies from
the year. Our industry, for those listening, is potentially being hit by minimum energy performance standards from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. Everybody here that you can hear buys into Net Zero, but there's some real issues there. Part of those standards is they're suggesting ban OLEDs.
Yeah.
Considering such a tiny part of the market, we don't know why they're doing that, but
it just adds to that thing that people, automatically think that because it's this, it's something else. I do think we need to go back to our old standards, which is properly chosen light fittings, properly designed, properly manufactured, using good lighting design, using controls and how it's used. Because in my mind, just sorry to finish, we light for people, not for power. We don't design buildings to save energy. These are all phrases that we need to start using again, because I think it's getting out of hand. I think the lumens per watt race is done, and I think the future will be it's not the lumens per watt, but it's what it does. Not what it is, but what it does.
But doesn't that also mean there's somebody else who should be sitting at this table, which is the designer? Because, like, why at the moment are we lighting offices, corner to corner, floor to floor, wall to wall? Because we should just be lighting the desk.
I go back to it, because we've always done it this way.
Because we've always done it that way.
That's, unfortunately, that task line has been around for as long as I remember.
No, that's a lighting scheme designer. I'm now going to go Alan as the product designer. So.
Well, I was going to talk about exterior to start with. So in street amenity lighting, we've been advocating dimming, part light dimming for a long time. And just about every single product we make has a dimming regime built into the driver. So we program it to the driver. So, for example, midnight 5 a.m. it's a 50%, and dusk to midnight and 5 to dawn, if there is in the winter at that time, it's at whatever the lighting design requires. And so we start with lighting design and the levels required to meet that design. We applied CLO to make sure that we optimize everything we possibly can, squeeze everything out. We're using the most efficient optics we possibly can. There's big differences in the efficiency of the optics we use. We use low iron glass to make sure we're cutting out as little light as we can. Of course, we've got to make the product IK08, let's say, so we can't go too thin on the glass. Unfortunately, we've got to hit that balance. But what we are seeing innovatively is dynamic lighting. So now we've got Zaga. I meant to mention Zaga earlier, talking about standardization, but perhaps we'll come back to that. Now we have Zaga. We have book 18 sockets for those that know what they are. And we have them very often top and bottom. We encourage customers to pay a few more quid, fit them on the bottom, so that they can use a book 18 motion detector at some point in the future, if that's what they want to do. So that way they can set their levels to whatever they want at the time they want and have it triggered when people approach. And that could be individually triggered or group triggered. So there are more savings. There are huge, as Dave said, come a long way. You take a 250 watt product consuming very nearly 300 watts in the days of high pressure sodium. That's probably a 140 watt product now. That's a huge step. But if we part light dim, maybe we won't be doing that on main roads, but actually we will be in the future with adaptive lighting, and I'll come back to that another time. Then there's another saving there. So there's much more we can be doing in the outdoor road traffic scenario. We've got 8 million streetlights, for goodness sake. They don't all need to be on full output to whatever the lighting class you need at peak time throughout the night. They absolutely do not. We don't necessarily want to be turning lights off. Where I live, the lights are turned off at midnight or something. It's a small village. I don't mind. Maybe some people do. A big town near me called Harlow, the council were turning the lights off. They're not turning them off anymore. The good people of Harlow objected to that, and I believe there was an increase in council tax, but they wanted to pay that to have some lighting. So there's options out there, and we've come a long way. I still think there's really quite a lot we can save. A little bit more in efficiency, a little bit more in efficacy. Choosing the right components. I get on my high horse really about product design and thermal management and thermal efficiency and cooling zones and picking up the drivers and managing the temperature, your solar point temperature and all those things. But if you do all that, you get more light out. If you get more light out, you need less watts. And if you use adaptive dynamic lighting or just set dimming regimes, you use less energy. And carbon goes with it, of course.
And you're back into the controls and the
absolutely controls can make. I know about all lighting controls.
Yeah, I know very little about your side of the industry, but I certainly know from conversations with Neil previously that one of the issues that you have on the commercial side for interior lighting is that you put these lovely systems in, and then somebody mucks about with the system there, and if you go back 6 months later, this system is nowhere near and optimized in the way that it was put in. So again, it's how do you make sure that people are making the best use of that? You're putting this functionality into your outdoor luminaires. Do the people within the maintenance department understand that, or are they going around and overriding it the first time they clean a diffuser or whatever they might be doing? And I think that's an education piece there.
Yeah. So if you've got a CMS attached to your outdoor product, somebody manages that. So the operative can't meddle with that. If people change roles in authorities and the expert leaves, the manufacturer of the CMS can manage it for them, provided they know. When Graham and I were talking earlier about what happens when you put a fantastic system in and then someone turns it off because they don't understand it, they just don't use it. Well, I don't think it matters if it's an indoor product or an outdoor product. If someone's not going to use the facility, but there's always the opportunity to help take that control and make it a managed service.
Before we go to Neil with his controls hat on, I'm going to let's look at the domestic people in the room. And let's ask that question, because the great thing about these meetings is where we can share ideas. So we're talking about partner dimming, and does that therefore, and we can't get our teenagers to turn the lights off, but does that mean actually therefore our bathroom lighting can be that when we go in there, I'm now the officially aged person, as of yesterday, if I go in the bathroom in the middle of the night, does it mean it comes on warm and dim and doesn't wake me up, but all I do is where's the toilet? This is the stuff that we go because that's energy saving, and it also increases the value of light, as opposed to you go down in the morning and you want to be woken up and it's bright and cool.
Yeah.
Is that something which helps?
Well, I think how do we make it accessible to the domestic consumer? How do we make it easy?
Yeah, easy for them to understand, because we have the technology to be able to do this.
Well, if I get it off their iPhone, they now begin to realise at 9 o'clock your iPhone starts changing colour. But if it happened automatically in the bathroom lighting and we accidentally save energy, is that a cool thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cool warm thing.
Neil.
I keep getting inspired by things that people are saying. But
that's what we're here for.
Exactly. An application for domestic level controls is the states are I think further ahead in terms of having controls functionality mandated. So we only recently had them mandated or added to Part Health for commercial buildings or non-dwellings last year. In in certain parts of the US, they have requirements where I think we call it last one out, but the last person leaving the house just hits a button, and they know then at that point all the lights in the house are off. So an empty house isn't being lit anymore by accident, or perhaps because your 18 or 17-year-old kid doesn't care. But actually, what I was going to mention was, and again, it was coming back to Dave's point, keeps teeing them up, thank you. Was the idea of the commissioning and the recommissioning. I think that's so important. I think we can come up with fantastically designed systems that, if are not at an appropriate frequency, well, commissioning at the outset, a proper commissioning of the system at the outset, and then recommissioning of the system throughout the building's life, then you lose the benefits of the system that you paid for. It's crazy to have a system in there capable of doing so much. And then because, of course, naturally, it's perfectly predictable, the building's use changes, the layout of the space changes. And so going back at a certain frequency, and this is something that the LIA and like Europe are advocating for in legislation as well. We're saying there should be a requirement to go back periodically and recommission the system. And make sure.
It's already there. I mean, Subsay's commissioning code is a really, really good document, and commissioning is just not making sure that the light works. It's so much more.
Tailoring it to
it's absolutely, is it doing what it was originally designed to do?
You think of how many systems would have been installed pre-COVID, pre-hybrid working, and those environments where those control systems now, what's happening in that environment is completely different, and it's a completely different occupancy rate. And how many of those systems do you think have been updated to reflect the usage within that area now?
I can tell you that they're turned off.
Yeah.
They don't not use them, they just turn them off because they don't understand it.
Right.
And from my perspective, there's a commercial opportunity as a company, obviously, to go back and say, for a commissioning fee, we'll redo it. But until the client understands the benefit of what the stakes are, getting it recommissioned, then it's always like, oh, well, it's a cost.
But I think some of this here is where you push back from where Simon was. Cost should be a driver. When you've seen electricity costs spike in the way in which they did in the early part of this year, all of a sudden it focuses people's minds. You know, we added occupancy sensors within the picking warehouse. And, as a lighting firm, and you suddenly start looking around going, some of what we're doing here, actually, we probably ought to practice what we preach. So, but it drove us to do that, and that's maybe that's piggybacking off of that message is perhaps where we need to.
Can I say one thing, Bob? Let's say one last thing on that point. I think three fundamental things in terms of smart lighting, lighting control. I think packaging and material composition are big drivers towards our goal. But I'd also like to mention, because your question was about what technology, and I think in terms of harnessing solar, there's some very exciting things going on now that we're involved in terms of how do you harness that sun's power to then use in battery storage systems so that you can then use lighting from that. And that for me is very much an exciting topic moving forward.
But does that mean we end up with a DC house or a DC office?
Maybe.
And possibly.
Maybe.